The annual International Martial Arts Expo was louder than ever this year. Thousands of fans filled the convention hall, cheering, filming, shouting, and swarming around the world's biggest martial arts legends. Stages were set for demonstrations, interviews, and special showcases. But the biggest attraction of the day, by far, was Steven Seagal's live Aikido demonstration. Standing tall in his signature black gi, Seagal moved with that familiar calmness, slow, steady, completely in control. He wasn't showing off. He never did. He spoke softly into the mic as he demonstrated effortless redirections and joint locks on volunteer instructors. Each time someone charged at him, he redirected them with just a small shift of his body. The crowd loved it. But then, a ripple went through the hall. A huge group of fans pushed toward the center aisle, phones raised, whispering excitedly. And at the middle of that group walked a man who instantly commanded attention. Bolo Yeung, built like a sculpted boulder, chest wide as a wall, arms thick with decades of discipline, the legendary action star walked with absolute confidence. Everywhere he went, people gasped, taking pictures. He stopped right in front of Seagal's stage. Seagal paused mid-demonstration, raising an eyebrow. The crowd sensed something was about to happen. Bolo crossed his arms, staring at Seagal with a half-smile. Not friendly, not hostile, but challenging. "Steven," Bolo called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your techniques look gentle. Effective, maybe, but can they handle real power?" A wave of ooh rolled across the expo hall. Seagal looked at him, expression unreadable. "Bolo," he replied calmly. "I'm here to teach, not compete." The crowd reacted again, some cheering Seagal's humility, others already pushing for a showdown. But Bolo stepped closer to the mat. Too close. "Come on, Steven," he said, voice booming. "Show these people what you can do, if you still can." The crowd began chanting, filming, pushing in from every direction. Seagal exhaled slowly. He hadn't come here to fight, but Bolo had just challenged him in front of thousands. And what happened next stunned everyone watching. A tense silence settled over the expo hall, as if the entire building was holding its breath. Bolo Yeung stood at the edge of the mat, arms crossed, muscles flexed, chest rising with slow, powerful breaths. He looked like a mountain blocking the path, and he knew it. Fans swarmed behind him like a tidal wave, chanting his name and urging the confrontation forward. Steven Seagal, on the other hand, didn't move. He simply watched. Calm, stoic, unbothered. That's what irritated Bolo the most. "You heard the people," Bolo said, stepping onto the mat. "They want to see if your Aikido can stand against real strength." Seagal tilted his head slightly, studying him. "I don't fight to impress crowds," he said quietly. "I fight to end conflict, not create it." But Beyond a Lookout wasn't listening. "Are you afraid?" he asked, raising his voice so the entire hall could hear. Gasps erupted. Phones shot into the air. Every angle of the moment was being recorded. Seagal's eyes narrowed, barely. "You misjudge me if you think fear is involved," he said. Bolo smirked. "We'll see." A ring formed around them. Dozens of fans rushed forward. Security tried to intervene, but quickly got overwhelmed by the sheer volume of people. The chants grew louder, echoing off the walls. "Bolo, Bolo, Seagal, Seagal, let them spar." Two legends. Two giants of action cinema. Two living symbols of raw martial arts power. It didn't take long for the energy to turn electric. Seagal stepped forward, not aggressively, but with control. "Bolo," he said, "you're a respected martial artist. I have no reason to prove anything to you." "Oh, but I think you do," Beyond the Lookout replied, leaning in. "Your time has passed, Steven. People wonder if you still have it. Show them." A low roar swept the crowd. A younger fan shouted, "Let's go, Seagal. Show the old-school power." Another yelled, "Bolo will crush him." The voices blended into a whirlwind of noise. Bolo took another step forward, now inches from Seagal. "So, Still teaching? Or ready to fight? Seagal didn't blink. Instead, he gently raised a single hand and signaled for one of his students, an Aikido black belt, to join him. The student approached anxiously, bowing low. Seagal kept his gaze on Bolo. "You want to see if my technique works?" he asked. "Watch closely." The student ran at Seagal at full speed. Without effort, without strain, without even changing expression, Seagal caught the man's wrist, pivoted slightly, and sent him rolling across the mat with a controlled yet powerful throw. The crowd gasped. Bolo didn't flinch. He just cracked his neck. "That's cute," he said, "but he's not me." The crowd roared again. Seagal took a slow, measured breath. "You misunderstand Aikido," he said. "It's not about overpowering someone. It's about redirecting force." Bolo took another bold step forward. "Then redirect me," he said. The hall exploded with noise. Everyone pressed closer, phones in hand. "Come on, Steven," a fan yelled. "He's challenging you. Don't walk away." But Seagal didn't walk away. He stepped fully onto the mat. The organizers shouted. This wasn't part of the schedule. "Please move back." But no one listened. They were witnessing something legendary, something people would talk about for years. Seagal and Bolo faced each other. Two titans, 2 decades of on-screen dominance between them, 2 completely different philosophies of combat. Bolo cracked his knuckles. "You ready?" Seagal lowered his arms, relaxed. "As ready as I need to be." The crowd froze. Bolo lunged first, fast, powerful, a sudden burst of raw muscle. He slammed forward with a palm strike aimed straight for Seagal's chest, a move that could knock most men off their feet. But Seagal slipped sideways, almost lazily, letting Bolo's force pass by him. He tapped Bolo's shoulder and redirected his momentum. Bolo stumbled, but caught himself. The crowd roared. Bolo's eyes narrowed. "All right," he said, "you've still got some tricks." He rushed Seagal again, this time with a flurry of strikes, fists, elbows, the classic beyond the lookout young intensity. Seagal moved like flowing water, deflecting, stepping aside, redirecting every attack with minimal movement. The crowd gasped with every near collision. This wasn't a movie fight. This wasn't choreographed. This was skill versus power. Finally, Bolo stepped back, breathing heavier, frustration building. Seagal still hadn't broken a sweat. "You done filling the air with punches?" Seagal asked calmly. The crowd screamed at the provocation. Bolo roared and charged once more, this time with his full strength. What happened next would change the entire mood of the arena. Bolo Yeung's final charge wasn't just an attack, it was a declaration. A lifetime of bodybuilding, kung fu training, and on-screen dominance powered each step. His feet thundered against the mat like a stampede. His shoulders rolled forward, muscles bulging, every vein visible. He was done testing. He was coming with everything he had. The crowd felt it. They moved back instinctively, forming a tighter ring. Phones flew higher. People climbed onto chairs and railings for a better view. This was no longer a friendly challenge. This was becoming a clash of legends. Bolo roared as he closed the distance, throwing a brutal hook meant to smash through any guard. His fist was a weapon, heavy, fast, unforgiving. Seagal, however, didn't react with panic. He didn't even raise his arms. He simply turned. One small pivot, a shift of the hips, a breath. Bolo's punch cut through empty air, nearly throwing him off balance. The momentum carried him forward. Seagal placed a hand lightly on Bolo's forearm and redirected the force downward. Bolo stumbled, caught himself, and spun around with a growl. "Stop running," he snapped. "I'm not running," Seagal replied softly. "I'm letting you finish wasting energy." The crowd erupted, some in laughter, some in shock. Bolo's nostrils flared. This wasn't how he expected things to go. His plan was simple: overpower Seagal quickly, force him into a corner, and make him react emotionally. But Seagal wasn't reacting emotionally at all. He was observing, waiting, breathing. That calmness, that infuriating calmness, only pushed Bolo harder. He launched into a rapid sequence. A low kick to the knee, a high punch, an elbow toward the ribs. His movements were surprisingly fast for his size, each one loaded with enough power to rattle bone. But Seagal floated. He shifted his weight like a ghost, deflected the elbow, redirected the punch, turned away from the kick. He looked like a man dodging slow raindrops, not a barrage of attacks from one of the strongest action stars in history. The crowd couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Bro, how is Seagal so calm?" someone shouted. "Look at Bolo's face. He's fuming. This is real. This is real." The commentators who came for the expo were now standing in disbelief, whispering into their mics. Bolo stopped, panting, chest heaving up and down. Sweat rolled down his temples. His fists were trembling, not from fear, but from frustration. How are you moving like that?" Bolo growled. Seagal gave the faintest smile. "You're coming at me like a bull," he said, "and all I need to do is step aside." That line hit Bolo like a slap. "I'm not a bull," he snarled. "Then stop charging like one." People screamed at the exchange. The energy soared through the roof. Bolo suddenly lowered his stance. This time, he didn't rush blindly. He approached slowly, studying Seagal, trying to predict his movement. He feinted left, then struck right with a heavy palm strike. Seagal parried. Effortlessly, Bolo pivoted and swung a back fist. Seagal ducked. Barely. Bolo moved in with a shoulder bump meant to throw Seagal off balance. But Seagal stepped aside, placed a hand on Bolo's back, and allowed the momentum to carry beyond the lookout forward. The crowd gasped as Bolo stumbled again. This time he caught himself with a growl of rage. "Stop throwing me off my line," he roared. Seagal raised an eyebrow. "Then stop giving me your line." Bolo's jaw tightened. His pride was on the line now. Fans were filming. People were whispering that Seagal looked untouchable, and that was unacceptable to him. He lunged once more, but this time he grabbed, not struck. He clamped onto Seagal's arm, intending to drag him into a grapple. If he could just get Seagal into a strength contest, he could end this. But Seagal twisted his wrist, rotated at the shoulder, and reversed the grip before Bolo realized what was happening. In one smooth motion, Seagal shifted downward and drew beyond the lookout off balance, not throwing him, not slamming him, but guiding his own strength against him. Bolo hit one knee, not hard, but decisively. A sound went through the crowd like lightning. "Oh!" Phones shook in the air. Fans screamed. People jumped up and down. Bolo looked up, eyes burning. He pushed himself back to his feet. "That was lucky," he spat. Seagal shook his head. "No, that was training." Bolo wiped sweat from his brow, chest still rising and falling. Across the mat, Seagal's breathing hadn't changed. He looked as calm as he did the moment he stepped onto the stage. Bolo's confidence began to crack. He stepped back. For the first time, he hesitated. The crowd felt the shift. Bolo clenched his fists, muscles trembling, breath unsteady. This wasn't the fight he expected. This wasn't the outcome he imagined. And now, he was starting to understand something he didn't want to admit. Steven Seagal was not the one being tested. Bolo Yeung was. What happened next would shift the entire direction of the match. And the regret was about to begin. The hesitation in Bolo's stance was small, barely a shift of weight, barely a pause in breathing. But Seagal saw it instantly. A master doesn't watch the body. He watches the spirit. And in that split second, Bolo's spirit flickered. The crowd didn't notice the subtlety. They only saw the tension. The circle tightened. People leaned forward, phones trembling in hand, recording history. The energy in the arena turned electric. Everyone waiting to see whether Bolo would break or explode. Seagal stayed perfectly still, his hands lowered, his posture relaxed. He didn't look like a man preparing to fight. He looked like a man waiting for someone else to find clarity. "Are you slowing down, Bolo?" Seagal asked quietly. Bolo's eyes snapped up. He hated how gentle Seagal's tone was. It wasn't an insult. It wasn't arrogance. It was worse. It was pity. "I'm not slowing down. Beyond the Lookout growled. You're getting lucky. Seagal shook his head. There's no such thing as luck in technique. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Bolo exhaled sharply through his nose, resetting himself. He raised his guard and began circling, trying to read Seagal, trying to reconnect to the confidence he had when the match began. But Seagal's calmness was a pressure of its own. Every step Bolo took felt heavier. Every decision felt slower. Every breath felt louder. Seagal's eyes tracked him gently, not judging, not mocking, simply observing. And that made it worse. Bolo suddenly stepped in, throwing a heavy low kick. Seagal lifted his leg, absorbing the strike with minimal impact. Bolo followed with an elbow. Seagal tilted his head slightly, letting it graze past. Then Bolo threw a barrage of punches, each one a boulder. Left, right, hook, cross, body shot, elbow, palm strike. The crowd roared. Phones shook. People screamed. Hit him. This is crazy. Bolo's going all out. But every single attack met the same fate. A deflection, a redirection, a breath, a pivot. Seagal didn't counter. He didn't strike back. He simply neutralized everything. Bolo's frustration was reaching its peak. His strikes grew more desperate, more aggressive, his breathing heavier and louder with each failed attempt. Finally, he managed to grab Seagal's sleeve. A ripple of excitement went through the crowd. He got him. He grabbed him. This is it. This is Bolo's world. Bolo yanked, using his full strength, trying to pull Seagal into a grapple, into a realm where muscle wins. But Seagal didn't resist. He entered the pull. He flowed with Bolo's force like water finding the path of least resistance. Bolo's balance shifted without warning as Seagal rotated his wrist, stepped across his center line, and placed a hand under his elbow. The movement was so fluid, so soft, that for a moment it didn't even look like a technique. Then, Bolo found himself flipped sideways. Not slammed, not thrown violently, just redirected, forcefully. He caught himself on his palms, preventing a full fall, but the message was clear. The crowd erupted with a deafening shockwave of screams and disbelief. No way. Seagal just threw Bolo. Is this real or what? Bolo pushed himself back up, but this time much slower. He stood there, chest heaving, sweat now pouring down his back. His arms were trembling. His legs were trembling. His pride was trembling. Seagal's breathing? Still calm. Still steady. Still untouched. Bolo swallowed hard, for the first time feeling something he never felt in his cinematic or real combat experiences. Doubt. Seagal stepped forward, just one step. But that single step made Beyond the Lookout retreat half a step without thinking. The crowd gasped. That hesitation wasn't subtle. That reaction wasn't small. It was clear. Bolo knew it. The audience knew it. Seagal definitely knew it. Your power is impressive, Seagal said softly. But you're using it wrong. Don't lecture me. Bolo spat, though the fear in his voice was impossible to hide. You're throwing your body instead of your intention, Seagal continued. Strength without direction is just noise. Bolo's face hardened. Shut up and fight me seriously. Seagal shook his head again. I am fighting you seriously. You're just not seeing it. The insult, or truth, hit Bolo harder than any strike could. He roared and charged again, not with technique, not with intelligence, but with pure fury. His punch came like a hammer aimed at breaking everything. Seagal didn't avoid this one. He stepped in. His hand caught Bolo's wrist midair. His shoulder aligned. His hips turned. In one effortless motion, Seagal applied a joint lock that froze Bolo in place. A lock so sharp, so sudden, so perfect, that Bolo's entire body stiffened. His knees bent involuntarily. His breath caught. His eyes widened in shock and pain. The crowd lost their minds. Oh my God, Bolo can't move. Seagal got him. He got him clean. Bolo tried to resist. He tried to pull away. He tried to muscle out. But every twitch sent a bolt of pain through his arm and shoulder. Seagal leaned closer. "This is why I warned you," he whispered. Bolo clenched his teeth so hard they almost cracked. The regret finally hit him full force. He had underestimated Steven Seagal. He had thought brute strength would dominate. He had assumed size would intimidate. He had believed experience would equal invincibility. But Seagal wasn't fighting Bolo's body. He was fighting his aggression, his ego, his tension, and he was dismantling it piece by piece. Bolo's voice, strained and breaking, escaped through clenched teeth. "Let go." Seagal tightened the lock just enough to remind him. "You started this. You wanted the lesson. Now you're getting it." Bolo shut his eyes, struggling not to scream. And the crowd watched in stunned silence as the mighty Bolo Yeung was held in place by a single joint lock from a man who hadn't even gotten warmed up. The regret had begun, but the real consequence was yet to come. The entire expo hall had gone silent. Thousands of people stood frozen in disbelief, watching the impossible. Bolo Yeung, the mountain himself, locked, controlled, immobilized by one arm. Steven Seagal didn't tighten the lock. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He simply held Bolo in a position where resistance meant pain and compliance meant humility. And that contrast was destroying Bolo more than the lock itself. Bolo's massive chest heaved, his muscles trembling. Sweat dripped from his forehead onto the mat as he fought the urge to tap out, something he had never done in front of a camera, much less a live audience. Phones zoomed in on his face, capturing every tremor of humiliation. "Bolo's stuck. I can't believe this. Seagal is too calm for this to be normal." Even the crowd that initially supported Bolo had fallen completely silent. Fans who once cheered his dominance were now watching him crumble. His pride was collapsing faster than his balance ever could. Seagal finally spoke. "Listen," he said gently, as if talking to a student. "You've built your body with discipline, but right now, your strength is working against you." Bolo gritted his teeth, trying to shift, but even a millimeter of movement sent a spike of agony shooting up his arm. "Shut up," he hissed, though the pain twisted the words. But Seagal didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You're not breathing," Seagal continued. "Your center is off. You're rushing, not thinking." The crowd hung on every word. Bolo's eyes flared with anger and humiliation, but beneath that, something new. Not fear of injury. He'd felt pain 1,000 times. This was deeper. Fear of losing face, fear of being unplugged from his own myth. Seagal lowered his voice even further. "You're letting emotion lead the fight." And that was the part Bolo hated hearing most. Because it was true. Bolo tried again, attempting a sudden twist, a last gamble. But Seagal moved first, reading the attempt before it even started. With one subtle shift of his weight, he redirected Bolo's force and tightened the lock just enough to drop Bolo to one knee. Gasps exploded through the hall. Bolo Yeung on one knee. The cameras flashed like lightning. The shock spread like fire. Even those who doubted Seagal before now stood with jaws hanging open. Seagal leaned slightly to the left, applying pressure in a direction that only an expert could see. "You're fighting me," he murmured, "but I'm not fighting you." Those words hit beyond the lookout harder than any throw could. His entire life, his entire career, was built on the idea of dominance, the idea that power conquers, that size intimidates, that aggression prevails. But this wasn't a battle of bodies. This was a battle of composure. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Bolo's breathing changed. The anger in his chest shifted into something closer to surrender. His shoulders dropped slightly, his jaw unclenched. Seagal felt it instantly. He loosened the lock. Not fully, just enough to let Beyond the Lookout breathe. "You good?" Seagal asked, still calm. Bolo didn't answer immediately. He looked up, eyes filled with a mixture of pride, pain, and realization. The crowd waited for an explosive response, but nothing came. Because even Bolo could feel it. This wasn't a loss. It was a lesson. Finally, with the smallest nod, Bolo whispered, "Release me. Not a demand, not a roar, just a request." Seagal slowly guided Bolo's arm back into a neutral position, supporting him so he didn't fall. It wasn't dominance anymore, it was respect. Bolo stood, shakily, holding his shoulder. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't flex. He didn't pose. He just stared at Seagal. "How?" Bolo whispered. "How did you control all of that?" Seagal wiped his hands calmly on his GI. "You attacked with anger," he replied. "I responded with intention." The crowd murmured in awe. Beyond the Lookout swallowed. His voice cracked. "What intention?" Seagal looked at him with a faint, almost compassionate expression. "To teach you," he said quietly. "Not to humiliate you." Those words hit Beyond the Lookout harder than any throw, any lock, any pain. His whole life he'd been surrounded by yes-men, fans, people afraid of his strength. But Seagal had treated him not as an enemy, but as a warrior who needed direction. Bolo lowered his head in respect, a gesture none of his fans had ever seen before. People gasped. Phones captured the moment instantly. Seagal placed a hand on Bolo's shoulder. "You're strong," he said softly. "But strength without control is chaos. You can do better than chaos." For the first time in decades, Bolo listened. Really listened. And in that moment, something changed. The crowd erupted, not in laughter, not in mockery, but in applause. Thunderous applause. Because even they recognized what had happened. Two legends had just shared a moment of truth. Not a battle of fists, a battle of wisdom. And Bolo Yeung, the unstoppable force, had finally met the immovable calm. The applause kept echoing across the expo hall, bouncing off every wall, every stage, every camera lens. But Beyond the Lookout, Yeung wasn't listening to the noise. He was listening to the silence inside himself. For the first time in years, he felt small, not physically, but spiritually. Not defeated, awakened. Seagal stepped back, giving Beyond the Lookout space. The tension between them wasn't hostile anymore. It had transformed into something deeper, respect. The kind only warriors understand. But the audience didn't know that yet. To them, this felt like the climax. They thought it was over. It wasn't. Not even close. A young woman from the crowd pushed forward, holding a poster of Seagal and Bolo from their old action films. Her hands were shaking. Her voice trembled. "See, can you both sign this? Together?" Bolo froze. The request, it hit him harder than the lock had. Fans had always seen him as the unstoppable villain, the muscle machine, the brutal powerhouse. But they'd never asked for him and Seagal, side by side, united. Seagal smiled slightly. Of course. He took the poster, signing his name first. Then he handed it to Bolo. Bolo hesitated, the marker trembling in his fingers. For a moment, he felt vulnerable, exposed. The crowd around him wasn't cheering his strength. They were cheering his humility. And that was new. He finally signed. The girl gasped, tears filling her eyes, and ran back to show her friends. The cameras zoomed in. The media streamed the moment. And somewhere in all the flashing lights, Bolo realized. This incident, this unexpected encounter, was no longer about winning. It was about evolving. But the world wasn't done reacting. From the side of the mat, a security guard rushed forward. "Master Seagal, sir, we have a situation." Seagal raised an eyebrow. "What kind of situation?" The guard whispered urgently. "Someone live-streamed the entire thing. It's all over the internet." Bolo's head snapped up. "What? Already?" The guard nodded fast, breathless. "There are millions watching. Right now? And they're not just watching. They're debating, analyzing, arguing. Some claim you two staged it. Others say it's the most genuine martial arts moment ever caught on camera." The crowd erupted again as more fans pushed toward the stage, shouting, "Bolo, don't feel bad. Seagal showed real skill. This is legendary. You're both icons." Bolo felt a wave of emotions he couldn't name. For decades, he had been admired for his physique, his intimidation, his ferocity. But now, people were admiring him for something different. His willingness to stand back up after being humbled. Steven Seagal folded his arms calmly. "Let them talk," he said. "Truth doesn't need defending." But Bolo shook his head. "No, Steven, this isn't something I want misunderstood." Seagal studied his face. "Then say what you need to say." And just like that, a path was laid in front of Bolo. A path of either pride or honesty. He turned to the crowd. He didn't raise his arms. He didn't shout. He didn't flex. He just spoke from a place he rarely accessed. "Everyone," he began, voice steady but raw. "I challenged Steven today because I thought I needed to prove something." The crowd went silent instantly. "I thought strength was about force, power, dominance." He glanced at Seagal, then back at the audience. "But today, I learned something else. Something important." Phones lifted higher. Streams exploded with viewers. Comments flew in thousands per second. Bolo took a breath. "I learned that real strength is calm. Real skill is control. Real mastery," he pointed at Seagal, "comes from humility, not anger." A wave of cheers crashed over the hall. Seagal stepped up beside him. "Bolo," he said softly, "you showed strength by standing in front of me, but you showed greater strength by learning." Bolo's throat tightened. He wasn't ready for that praise. He didn't know how to handle it. He looked at the crowd again. "You all came here expecting a fight," he said. "Maybe even blood." He shook his head. "But what you saw today was something better." He pointed to the mat. Two martial artists, showing respect. The arena exploded with applause, louder than anything the expo had heard the entire weekend. For the first time ever, Bolo smiled. Not the villainous smile from his films. Not the cold, intimidating grin. A real smile. Human. Grateful. But then, something unexpected happened. A group of younger martial artists, real competitors, not actors, approached the mat and bowed deeply to both Seagal and Bolo. One of them, voice shaking with emotion, said, "You two just taught us the most important lesson in martial arts, without throwing a single harmful punch." Bolo blinked, stunned. Seagal simply nodded. The moment was powerful, pure, and absolutely unforgettable. And that was when everyone realized. The true viral moment wasn't the throw, wasn't the joint lock, wasn't the conflict. It was this. Two legends standing side by side. One teaching, one learning, both inspiring. The world had seen many fights, but it had never seen a moment like this. The moment the expo ended, the internet exploded. Clips of Seagal redirecting Bolo. The joint lock. Bolo dropping to one knee. Their handshake. Their shared respect. Every angle, every second, every breath was being replayed on millions of screens across the world. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Chinese platforms, Russian forums, Facebook groups, Reddit threads. Within 1 hour, the hashtag Seagal vs. Bolo became the #1 trending topic globally. Within 3 hours, it hit 200 million views. Within 12 hours, news channels picked it up. Anchors debated. Did Steven Seagal humble Bolo Yeung? Was this the greatest martial arts moment of the decade? Did two legends just redefine respect? Martial arts schools everywhere began replaying the footage during classes, analyzing the footwork, the control, the humility. Even UFC fighters posted reactions. But the most impactful reaction came from everyday people. A woman from Brazil wrote, "Seeing Bolo humbled with dignity made me cry. True strength is learning." A teenager from the Philippines said, "Steven Seagal showed respect and control. This is what martial arts really means." A father from Canada wrote, "I'm showing this to my son to teach him humility." But the biggest shock came next. Overnight, Bolo Yeung gained 3.5 million followers on social media. The world wasn't mocking him. They weren't laughing at his mistake. They were praising his humility. Bolo sat in his hotel room, scrolling through messages he never expected to see. "You inspired me today. Seeing you learn changed my perspective. You're a legend for how you accepted defeat. This made me respect you more than your films." He stared at the screen, overwhelmed. His hands actually trembled, not from combat, not from adrenaline, but from humility. He whispered to himself, "I didn't lose anything today. I gained something." Meanwhile, Steven Seagal was on his balcony, sipping tea, unfazed by the chaos online. To him, it was simple. Two martial artists trained. One learned. One taught. He didn't see it as a victory. He saw it as a responsibility fulfilled. The next morning, the expo organizers asked Seagal and Bolo to appear together for a final panel. The crowd was bigger than yesterday. Twice as many people, all holding posters, banners, and signs reading, "Respect. Humility wins. Legends teach. Bolo plus Seagal equals honor." The moderator handed both men microphones. Seagal spoke first. "What happened yesterday wasn't a fight. It was a lesson, and lessons are meant to be shared." Bolo nodded, then stepped forward. "I want to say something," he announced, his voice carrying across the hall. The entire arena went dead silent. Bolo took a deep breath. "Yesterday, my ego was louder than my discipline. I let pride guide me. But Steven reminded me of who I used to be, a student." Seagal smiled gently. Bolo continued, "I want the world to know something. I am not embarrassed. I am grateful." The crowd erupted, many rising to their feet. Bolo lifted his head higher. "If you learn from your mistakes, you become stronger. If you pretend you have no weaknesses, you stay weak." He pointed at Seagal with genuine respect. "This man showed me control, wisdom, and patience. That is real power." Even Seagal looked moved. The audience roared with applause, intense, heartfelt, unforgettable. Then Bolo stepped closer to Seagal. "Steven," he said softly, "I challenged you, and I was wrong. Thank you for teaching me." Seagal placed a hand on Bolo's shoulder. "And thank you," he replied, "for having the courage to learn." The moment was electric. Photographers captured the handshake that followed, a powerful, symbolic gesture that instantly became one of the most shared images of the year. Together, they bowed to the audience. Together, they walked off the stage. And together, they left behind a lesson the world would never forget. True strength isn't shown by defeating others, but by mastering yourself. The video continued to spread for months. Documentaries were made. Podcasts analyzed the encounter. People everywhere repeated the message. If you believe respect is stronger than ego, type respect. And just like that, a challenge that began with pride ended with global inspiration. Two legends. One lesson. Infinite impact.